Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here to talk about the new faith-based film, Unsung Hero. I've seen it, so let's talk about it. So Unsung Hero is sort of the latest faith-based story to find its way onto the silver screen. Seems like we've had a lot of them in recent months. And I will admit a couple things. If you guys have been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I am often somewhat lukewarm about faith-based films. I love the faith part. I'm just not always as crazy about kind of the lackluster film part. I'll also say that CCM music is just not my personal cup of tea, and kind of because of that, my knowledge of For King and Country, which is the creators and also the subject of Unsung Hero, is very limited. And I don't say any of that to disparage anyone that is very much into those things. Just to say that despite the fact that this is a faith-based film and I'm a Christian, I'm not necessarily just predisposed to enjoy a film like that, which I think makes it all the more impressive that I did enjoy this film. I think this is a good film. I think while never straying all that far from the established kind of genre template, this is a very enjoyable, feel-good story of faith and family that I think is bolstered by some almost surprisingly strong performances. So this movie is being released by Kingdom Story Group, which is the company that also released Jesus Revolution and also Ordinary Angels. And it seems like they have sort of planted their flag in a sweet spot between the cinematic Sunday school lessons of the Kendrick brothers, and then sort of the more, we're faith-based, but we're not pushy about it approach of Angel Studios. And I think kind of like Kingdom Story Group's other films, this is an inspirational, kind of based on a true story drama that is very character kind of driven story about Christians, and also set in kind of a fun, nostalgic time, in this case, the 1990s. So I think if you are someone that enjoyed Jesus Revolution and or Ordinary Angels, I think you'll likely appreciate this film as well. And for someone that more or less liked both of those other films, I will say that this Unsung Hero might be the best of the trio. And while this film captures a lot of the strengths of those other Kingdom Story Group films, I think it does also share at least some of the weaknesses. I think kind of almost ironically, despite the fact that this movie is produced by a family of extremely successful musicians, the movie itself is fairly one note, which is a criticism I had of both Jesus Revolution and Ordinary Angels, where it almost feels like every scene is manufactured just to tug on a viewer's heartstrings. I think that there's a very delicate line between emotionally moving and just emotionally exhausting. And if Unsung Hero doesn't cross the line, it at least spends a lot of its runtime kind of towing the line. I think some of sort of that emotional, heartstring tugging is just typical of the inspirational kind of drama genre, but there does seem to be almost a reluctance towards just allowing important moments to unfold without, some kind of forced, swelling background music. Because this movie is at its best when it just sort of focuses on the family dynamic and kind of allows the characters a bit more breathing room and a less is more kind of approach. For example, there's a great scene in this in which the mother and the children stop at a playground to play pirates and just enjoy each other's company, although that scene does ultimately morph into one of perhaps the most effective heart-tugging moments in the film. But thankfully, despite a very, I think, cringeworthy kind of animated short that played before this movie, featuring a cartoon character giving a very contrived gospel presentation to a dog, which is a conversation for another day, I do think this movie mostly avoids some of the heavy-handed, sermonizing that a lot of other faith-based films can get accused of. The themes in this are rarely subtle, but it just, the story never gets bogged down by them either. Another thing this movie demonstrates is kind of the standard criticism, about the very amateur acting performances in faith-based films is becoming more and more outdated with each passing year, because this film does succeed kind of on the back of several surprisingly, I think, effective and great performances. Because Joel Smallbone, who is a member of For King and Country, as well as a co-director of the film, and he stars in one of the lead roles And there was nothing about his performance last year in the movie Journey to Bethlehem that would at all suggest that, like, he's destined to become some sort of double threat entertainer. But he does surprisingly well in like a more central role in this film. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's just a way more personal role for him, as he is portraying his own father in this. And I think he also benefits from just being surrounded by a lot of other talent, because Daisy Betts, who I was unfamiliar with before this film, she plays Helen, who's like the family's matriarch, and she very much is this sort of the engine that drives this film forward. She is like the unsung hero that gives the movie its title, but it's also clear that she is the star of this film. And also Kyrie Berger, who is a young actress, that another one I was unfamiliar with, she is also, I think, very good in the role of like a young Rebecca St. James. But if I were to have like a criticism, or at least a nitpick about the characters, none of it is based on like, the performances. And I think it's more, the usage of the characters, because I do think this film has a somewhat undefined like point of view. It begins as a story focused on the father, and then kind of partway through it shifts to be more focused on the mother, before ultimately finishing, a story that's emphasizing sort of the daughter. And kind of like by the end of Unsung Hero, it is largely about the daughter Rebecca's sort of own musical journey, even though like she's hardly uttered a line of dialogue until about halfway through the film. And I think kind of ultimately the approach does mostly work, since each of the character kind of arcs on their own are interesting and they're all well acted. But I do think kind of the shifts in perspective and focus does prevent the story from ever diving like all that deep into any one of these characters. As far as content to consider, things going on the surface of this thing, not very much at all. As far as language, the only thing for that is that, again, Helen is the mother, and she is sometimes referred to by the nickname, a kind of shortened name of Hell, which does get used by several characters, as sort of an innuendo, like, someone saying, go give America, a lot of hell, or things like that are clearly referring to her, but it can be interpreted in other ways. Violence, there's no violence in this film, nor is there any kind of sexuality to be concerned about. The only other sort of content thing, which is kind of unexpected, unusual, is just that there is a sequence that takes place during like the Christmas season that does sort of dance around the Santa question. And although like no sort of definitive answer is given in the movie, there are enough like breadcrumbs that a discerning young viewer might be able to piece things together, which is to say a heads up if you're a parent and maybe you're like sensitive about that topic. As far as themes kind of going on beneath the surface of this thing, there's a couple, I think, good things going on here. I think probably the main theme is just sort of miracles, like God's provision. And I think there is something, at least on the surface, that is almost a little bit like underwhelming about like the types of miracles that the small bone family experiences. For example, at one moment, one of the children prays for things to be more cheap, which leads, shortly after that, one of the other kids stumbles upon, a magazine that has some coupons, which ultimately allows the family to save a few dollars at the grocery store. Or like in another scene, when a wealthier kind of family friend sees the small bones kind of Christmas list filled with items that the family would never be able to afford on their own, and then kind of generously purchase those items on their behalf. And kind of none of those types of miracles are necessarily overly like dramatic or like, incomprehensible. But sort of like the question that the film asks is like, does that mean that those aren't miracles just because they are small? And there's one kind of a pivotal conversation that Helen is having on the phone in which she does remark that her family has seen many miracles and many answers to prayers, even if they haven't come, as she says, in the form of dramatic lightning strikes from the sky or anything like that. And I think in that way, Unsung Hero does offer, I think, a very important example of just being mindful and just appreciative of God's activity. I think both the big and the small that is sort of all around us in our life. So in the end, I enjoyed this movie. This wasn't a film that, I was super amped up, excited to see. But I do think that it's just a well-made movie, really from start to finish. It's competently like filmed and, obviously as you would expect from a film made by some musicians. There's good music, a good kind of, that's incorporated throughout. It's well acted, and I think it's just a good story. It's an uplifting story. It's a wholesome story that has some good themes, has some good, kind of messaging or things that it's exploring, and it does so in a way that doesn't feel like it's just sort of beating you over the head with these overly sugary, sweet kind of Christian, sermonizing tendencies. I don't think it's a film that, any of the events in it are necessarily going to blow you away or just like hard to believe. I think the miracles themselves would obviously be amazing and, praiseworthy to have experienced. Doesn't necessarily mean that they always translate quite as, powerfully into like, a cinematic portrayal. But I think while like a lot of audiences won't be able to relate to the specific, experiences of the small bone family, I think we can all relate to family and hardships. And I think kind of most importantly, just the need for God's protection and provision. I think this is a film that I think will resonate with a lot of audiences. But hey, if you check out this film, would love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this movie, if you're a fan of, the bands and that led you to it, or if you're like me and, you're just a metalhead that, had no idea who these people are and you just want to see a good film, we'd love to hear from you. So jump into the comment section. Let's have a conversation about that. If you haven't done so, I encourage you guys to subscribe to our channel, become a Collider. Get lots of fun stuff. We got movie reviews and a podcast and interviews. We'd just love to have you be a part of that. But most of all, guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe and continue to collide through a world for Christ.